Salute and greetings from a multilingual Moldova. Now, I made a video a couple of weeks back where I outlined whether you should or should not learn Russian in 2023 with the Russo-Ukrainian war. And a follow-up question that came from many of my clients was, okay, Connor, thanks for that video, but if we're not going to learn Russian, then which language should we learn for traveling and living in Eastern Europe in 2023? And do you even have to learn a local language? Can't you just rely on English? Aren't the young people of Eastern Europe now all pretty fluent in English? What is the point? Should I go and do it? So that's what we're going to get into in today's video. Hi, Submergent.
SAR Experience.
So what is the level of English like here in Eastern Europe? There's a company called Education First that publishes a ranking, and when I looked this year, most of the countries in Eastern Europe are actually in the third of 5 categories that they have. Previously, they were actually in the 4th, so their level of English has actually improved a bit in the last couple of years since I started making these videos on YouTube. And they have what would be called a moderate proficiency in English. We're talking about countries like Georgia, Armenia, here Moldova, Belarus, Russia, Ukraine, etc. Now, it is lower than you're going to find in Central Europe, so countries like Czechia, Poland, Hungary. There, the level of English will be considerably higher. And let's not get started on the Netherlands or Sweden or somewhere like that, where they basically speak almost as good English as I do in general. And you should always remember that we have these general classifications, right? But people who are more likely to speak English in Eastern Europe are younger, urban, better educated, wealthier. They would have gone and invested or had the exposure to English. So their English is going to be a good bit better. Another thing about the ranking, they actually put Kazakhstan quite low in the 5th of 5 categories. But when I was in Almaty and in Astana, I'm definitely in Almaty with my client, which is in the south of Kazakhstan, the old capital city and the commercial capital of Central Asia, the level of English, I would say, was actually a little bit higher than in the rest of Eastern Europe. So they're giving a national average. And of course, if you're not hanging out in the countryside, where I'm sure almost no one speaks English in Kazakhstan, then actually the level of English will be that moderate proficiency. So in general, if you have a reference experience of traveling, say, to Central Europe or maybe Northern Europe, like in Scandinavia, it actually happens to be a lot better, the level of English. Also in the Baltics, it ranks higher. It's in the 2nd of the 2 of the 5 categories. So in Eastern Europe, don't expect the same experience in general as, say, going on a trip to Budapest or to Stockholm or even probably to Berlin. It's going to be a good bit lower, but it's not like no one is going to speak English. What is the value of learning the local language in Eastern Europe? Now, you have an idea about the proficiency levels of English. Not terrible, but not amazing. First of all, you will find it a lot less stressful being in Eastern Europe if you can understand what's going on around you. Just makes everything a lot smoother. Also, you will be a lot less likely to get scammed if you speak this local language. Basically, it's the best anti-scammer defense. This was a big issue in particular in the past in Russia and in Ukraine, especially with the romance scams. Then you also, on the romance side, have the sex tourist box, or a guy who's come in just to try and chase girls for the weekend, which isn't so desirable in Eastern Europe amongst the local ladies here. And if you speak the local language, well, then automatically they're not going to consider you in that category of guy, clearly. And speaking of dating, I think that you will double your dating, to borrow a phrase that was used in the marketing of the dating industry about 20 years ago, if you speak the local language, because you're just going to be able to speak to more girls and probably higher quality girls in general once you move out of that sex tourist box. So definitely it will be worth it from that point of view. It will be massive value. So the Foreign Service Institute of the US State Department, they estimate that it takes between 600 and 750 classroom hours to learn Romanian, which is actually the national language here in Moldova. And that is the exception in Eastern Europe, because the rest of, more or less the rest of the language that you might learn, like Russian, Belarusian, Ukrainian, Armenian, Georgian, Latvian, etc., Polish, they will take, according to the Foreign Service Institute, 1,100 classroom hours. So there you see, quite a big investment outside of Romanian. Romanian is actually a Romance language, also derived from Latin, just like Italian, Spanish, French, Portuguese. So it happens to be a good bit easier. Now I have to say, in my experience of learning many Romance languages, because I speak those languages like French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, and I've learned Romanian, and I've also learned many of the other languages that are Slavic languages like Russian, Ukrainian, and Belarusian. I don't think that it takes just twice as long to learn, say, Russian than it does Romanian. I would say it takes at least 3 times longer. It's a lot harder as a native English speaker. Just be aware of that. That's what they say. I think it's actually a bit more of a time investment. So consider that in also my experience, that you get a huge boost in the beginning. So I would definitely encourage people to learn the basics, but to go from basics to advanced and really fluent, it is, in a language like Russian, for example, a huge time investment. I wouldn't necessarily say that it means a big financial investment, other than maybe paying for a tutor and buying a few programs. And in fact, if you want to steal my tips, the ones that I garnered over, over a decade of learning languages, whether it was in Western Europe or here in Eastern Europe, down below I have a free series that you can go and, take advantage of my expertise in the subject, and it's just down below. You can go and sign up for it there, completely free. If you're new to learning languages, maybe this is going to save you a hell of a lot of time in terms of trial and error. So going into 2023, Russian is still the main lingua franca in the region. And I think for guys that are not planning to live in one country in particular, but maybe going between several Eastern European countries, maybe they're going to be in the Caucasus for a couple of months, maybe in Central Asia, then maybe here like in Moldova, where even if Russian is not an official language, it is spoken by the majority of the population to a high level. So you can definitely use it here. And still in parts of Ukraine, it's going to be very useful to be able to speak in Russian if you are traveling. So if you are planning a little bit of a nomadic adventure throughout Eastern Europe, it's still the most widely spoken language. But if you are actually going to spend, say, a good few months in one country in particular, or if you're planning to actually relocate permanently, as I help a lot of guys do in the past, then if you come here to Moldova, you're better off learning Romanian, because Romanian is a lot easier than Russian to learn as a native English speaker, and then it is actually the official language and more widely spoken. The same goes to the rest of the countries: Polish for Poland, Ukrainian for Ukraine, Latvian for Latvia, etc., Georgian for Georgia. Kazakhstan is an interesting exception because in the big cities like Almaty and Astana, Russian is still more prevalent than Kazakh. So I'd say if you're going to go and live in Kazakhstan, probably for most people it's going to be still better to learn Russian first and then Kazakh afterwards if you're obviously living there for a while. But considering that you can use Russian in other countries outside of Kazakhstan then, and the fact that in Almaty you're actually probably going to see and hear way more Russian or Kazakh in that city, and that's where most guys I think would actually go and hang out in, then Russian still makes more sense there. But in the other countries, like in particular in Ukraine, definitely going forward in 2023, Ukraine is going to be a lot more useful to use than Russian. So that's what I think in terms of choosing the language going into 2023. And I outline my experience with learning language. Obviously, guys who come and live the Czar experience with me in person, that's actually why I'm here in Moldova for the last, I was here 2 weekends out of the last 3 with clients, and we were having some unforgettable weekends together. Obviously, I got you covered on the language front if you're hanging out with me for the weekend. And could be you in 2023, going to be heading back to Kazakhstan, also going to Latvia and perhaps to Poland. So if you are interested in living the Czar experience yourself, down below is an application form that you should fill out, because the Czar experience is by application only. And if it works out, if it's good fit for us, it could be you here. So go check that out. Also, if you want to know more about the Czar experience, I've created a playlist of experiences with past clients and in the cities that currently we will be going on the Zara Experience to. I am not recommending travel to Ukraine, Russia, or Belarus for now. So go check that out. I'll put it up on a card down below in the description as well. And as I walk through this park in the center that I see there, they're actually doing some renovation work. It's not looking the nicest at the moment, but Chisinau itself has come on leaps and bounds in the last few years, and I can definitely recommend it for at least a weekend, if not to move to. So all the best in 2023 with your language learning endeavors. La rivedere, do svidania, do pobачення. See you in the next video. Ciao, ciao.
Zara Experience.